Hello, y'all. This is Jessica, the Traveling Humanist. I am here with Andrew J. Katz, this very talented artist, graphic designer, and teacher. And we're going to have us an interview with him. How you doing, Andy?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for letting us be a part of your creations. We really appreciate it. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Andy Katz. I've been born and raised in Maryland, and I'm a teacher. I've been teaching art for 21 years, and I love hip hop music, and I love trying to celebrate hip hop music with my artwork.
Okay, well, yeah, that's how we you caught our eye on Twitter. We got to see a lot of your wonderful artwork. What made you first fall in love with hip hop and its culture?
Well, if I go way back, I think it was part of the reason I think I fell in love with hip hop was that where I grew up was just a very homogeneous part of the country, at least part of the state that I lived in. So I lived in the suburbs, and I was brought up listening to music that my parents listened to. And when I was sort of coming of age, and I was looking for other things to listen to besides what my parents offered me, my sister had a party at our house, and when the people left the party, somebody left a mixtape behind. And on the mixtape were all of these, what turned out to be classic hip hop songs. Wild Wild West by Kool Moe Dee, Supersonic by JJ Fad, The Show by Dougie Fresh and Slick Rick, Jane by EPMD. And, it was this, really like homemade mix. It might have even been recorded off the radio, in the late 80s. And, obviously, I had heard of Run DMC and LL Cool J and the Beastie Boys, but when that tape got left behind in my house, I really connected with it in a way where I really wanted to hear more, and I wanted to be a part of it somehow. And I was never a rapper myself, and I was never all that musically inclined to make music. So when I started thinking about the visuals, coming up with music videos on MTV and finding music videos that sort of showcased hip hop, I began to think about celebrating it visually. So it didn't take too long, but it was kind of a slow burn where I eventually started to make artwork, which is how I expressed myself, and how I expressed my love for hip hop, since I wasn't going to be rapping or dancing or impressing anyone that way. I wanted to make sure that I paid tribute to all of the artists that I was impressed by.
Well, that's something we definitely can see in your artwork. You can definitely see your passion on the canvas. So you think that's what made you ultimately decide to do, that type of artwork, is the passion and how you felt about it?
Well, for sure, but I actually remember even more specifically a couple of instances where I really felt strongly that I was onto something. One of those instances was it was after Adam Yauch from the Beastie Boys passed away in 2012, so not really all that long ago. I had done a portrait of a baseball player, Rod Carew, and I had an opportunity to meet Rod Carew and show him my painting. And while I was in line to meet him, I realized, wait a minute, the Beastie Boys had a song, Sure Shot, where they mentioned Rod Carew, and they sort of called him out, and they said, I've got mad hits like I was Rod Carew. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if when I met Rod Carew, that he tagged that line, the Beastie Boys lyric, right onto the original watercolor painting. And it was sort of a make it or break it moment, because I didn't know how he would react when I asked him. Because he's in the baseball world, he's not in the hip hop world. I wasn't even sure if he'd know what I was talking about. And so I approached him and I said, would you write this lyric on my painting? And I was even more specific than that, because he doesn't have mad hits like he was Rod Carew. He is Rod Carew.
Right,
so I asked
right.
him to write, I asked him to write, "I've got mad hits," and then sign it Rod Carew.
That's
And when
cool.
I asked him, when I asked him to do it, he kind of laughed and he said, "Oh, you too," because he had just signed an album. Somebody else had brought a Beastie Boys album for him to sign. So I guess I wasn't the first to ask him to sign something Beastie Boys related, but I may have been the first to have him sign an original piece of art and write a Beastie Boys lyric on it. So as soon as I was done, I took a picture of the painting to kind of archive it, which is what I usually do now. And when I saw it, I was like, wait a minute, this is something that I really, this is a connection that I want to pursue. I want to, the whole lyrics and art, and in this case, the music, and I need to find the Beastie Boys. So I went to New York a couple months later because Mike D was DJing a food tasting event in Brooklyn, and I found him. And I went up to him with the painting, and a real long story short, Mike D also tagged the same painting. So I had this painting that was celebrating things that I love. It was celebrating sports and art and music and hip hop and lyrics in particular that I loved. And so right then and there, I was like, all right, what's next? Who am I going to find? What lyrics are my favorites? And everybody has. If you like music of any kind, you have favorite lyrics that make you feel, that make you remember a moment, or that make you smile, or go, oh, that was clever the way they connected those two or three things.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that I just love about hip hop is when they turn a phrase and it makes you think, and you're like, wait, I got to hear that again.
Right.
And where it connects to something that you think has nothing to do with what they're talking about. And that's how I felt about Rod Carew and the Beastie Boys. I mean, it almost didn't make sense that they were calling him out, but they had obviously been impressed by his baseball playing ability the same way I was in the 70s and 80s. And all being around the same age, it's kind of cool when you realize that some of the pop culture references feel the same way to you as they do to the artists that say them. And so I'm sure that that's still going on in hip-hop now, but one of the things that I love about hip-hop then were these sort of pop culture references, whether it was EPMD talking about a Samurai Suzuki or something along those lines. I love getting those kinds of lyrics. And now, with the art, I get in front of these guys, and I ask them to write their famous lyrics, my favorite lyrics, onto the painting, and I truly look at it as a collaboration. So to answer your question, I mean, going back to when I realized, all right, it's not just doing a painting anymore. It's doing a painting and using it as a ticket for adventure. That's what I always say. It's my ticket for adventure. I go and I seek out these people who are still performing, which is great. And I let them know through my artwork that I'm celebrating them and the memories that they've given us and the music that they've given us. And you just don't know how much longer some of these guys will perform. Hopefully for a lot longer. You never know. And by going out and finding them and showing them what their music means to me has been such an inspiration for me. Like, it really has given me this whole new appreciation of the music, and it's given me this outlet for expression where I'm using other people's photographs and I'm painting from them. I'm making them my own by connecting with the artists who made the music.
Right. That is so cool. The more that I get to know you, the more that I realize how much you bring to the hip hop culture. You're not just an artist, but you have these stories, these stories that they're original to themselves, and it embodies hip hop. It shows how hip hop definitely inspires so many, and it still inspires so many. And like you were saying about the lyrics, one powerful lyric can change so much in people's lives all over the world, so hip hop is definitely one of those platforms that's extremely, extremely powerful. So now, talking about the world, and when it comes to your craft, how does your craft, you think, make the world a better place?
Well, if I could ever say that my art makes the world a better place, that would be amazing. I'm not sure if it does. I like to think maybe because I'm a teacher, I try to put my ideas where my mouth is, and I try to walk the walk. So when I'm teaching kids, I'm coming from a place of hopefully authenticity, where I'm not just saying, you should make art, you should think artfully, you should practice artistic behaviors, you should keep a sketchbook. I'm doing those things.
Right.
So when I'm sharing those ideas with kids, I'm walking the walk, and I think that there's a lot to be said for setting an example. I don't want to call myself a role model at all, but I think adults are by default role models, whether they like it or not.
Right.
I always think of that old Charles Barkley advertisement from the 80s where he said, "I am not a role model." Well, yeah, you are, whether you like it or not. You could choose to be a bad role model or a good role model.
Right.
And you sort of have to realize that you're being watched by kids. They're looking at you 24/7, and they're taking their cues from you. So when you do something and you do it with love and you do it with care and you try to be as authentic as you can, hopefully people will notice that. And as far as making the world a better place, I mean, that's the only way I know how to try to make it a better place, is to try to be the person that you would want kids to be, and treat people the way you'd want to be treated yourself. So a lot of this is the rules and the kind of sentiments our parents said. If you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. Right. I think it's funny now that I say that as an adult, because you kind of roll your eyes a little bit when you're a kid, but I think there's so much truth to that. And when people realize that they need to be accountable for their actions because other people are taking notice, especially young people, then maybe they'll make better decisions. So being an artist for me is a no-brainer. But trying to put out artwork that is both from the heart and inspires me, but also inspires other people. If that's happening, that's fantastic, and that's all I can really hope for.
Well, I definitely agree with you there. When it comes to making the world a better place, it does start with us adults, but it also feeds down into our children, because eventually they'll be the ones that's running this while we're, we might be in a nursing home or anything. So, it's really important that they see positive things so they can become positive people, because the world is only going to be as good as we humans make it. That's where they learn from. So I'm very glad that you brought up the children, because that takes me back to the other day we were talking about STEM, which stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And you were saying that you believe that an A for art should be included to that. Tell us why you think that.
Well, one of my jobs as a teacher is to be a better teacher. So oftentimes I'll go to professional conferences and speak with other art teachers around the country, kind of compare notes and see what they do with their curriculum, what kind of lessons they put out there. And there was this really big initiative called STEM, and it was science, technology, engineering, and math. And one of the things that a lot of the art teachers noticed is that, we do a lot of cross-curricular unit development. So when we come up with a lesson, we think, we're going to make sundials. Well, that has math components in it. Right. There's obviously science being discussed when you talk about why a sundial works the way it does.
Right.
And then we were making them beautiful. We were making them personal portrait sundials, or we were making something artistic as a piece of that. And so we were constantly seeing that these, quote, new lessons that were involving science, technology, engineering, and math were wonderful. But we had been doing some of those things all along. We just didn't have a fancy acronym for it. So the idea that sort of sprung forward was to add an A to STEM and make it STEAM. And, the fact is every discipline could add their letter and then we could come up with some really, really long name or long acronym.
Right.
But I do think that art. I'm biased, obviously, as being an art teacher. I think art is one of the most cross-curricular disciplines there is. I mean, we can teach a math lesson with art. We can teach a science lesson with art. We can teach the humanities with art, and vice versa. And I feel like art is a huge component of all those other disciplines. So it was just a natural discussion to have, to add the A to STEM. And frankly, there's quite a lot of people who have run with that idea, much smarter than me, much more famous than I am, who are talking about these ideas at design schools and art schools, and even in regular comprehensive high schools and middle schools. So it's not a new idea. It's just we're adding the A in there to bring it to back to the art classroom when and if possible.
Well, hopefully that comes into fruition. I think that's an excellent idea to add the A. Like you said, art is a part of it all. You can't escape it. It creates the world around us. So I definitely think that A should be added. We're going to have to make that happen, Andy. So
I'm working on it. I mean, that's, I work on that kind of every day. It's part of my daily challenge.
Right. Okay, so along with being this great artist and a teacher and graphic designer, you're also an advocate against racism. And there's a thing called MCA Day has been hosted in Brooklyn for the last 4 years, and you're a very big part of that. So let everybody know exactly what that is.
Well, Adam Yauch from the Beastie Boys, I feel like I kind of grew up with him. I didn't know him, and I never actually met him. But as a Beastie Boy in, I think, 1986, when their album License to Ill came out, I was, sort of shocked and amazed at the same time. They were talking about some pretty controversial things. Like they were sort of misogynistic punks. They were talking about drinking and drug use in sort of a comical way.
Right.
And as an impressionable young person, I was like, this is interesting. And the music was captivating. But what they could have just kind of flamed out at that point. Right. But what they did, and I think that this is really important, is they grew up. They matured, and their next albums were a reflection of that. And they were sort of apologetic almost about the misogyny, and they were in a genre that was largely African American. So they shifted and they became more responsible with their lyrics and their approach, and I think they became artists as they went along, much more so than when they first started. And Adam Yauch emerged from that, totally changed. He began civil rights work with he created the Tibetan freedom concerts, and he was active in trying to free Tibet. And he was much more reflective. He became Buddhist and ended up really making some decisions that put them on the map in a much more sort of substantive and meaningful way. And people like me who were fans really took note and said, "Wow, this is important." And starting to use their music to then carry their message, that really also resonated with me as somebody who was trying to make my message through visual art.
Right. Yeah.
And so
that's really. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to say that I wish that more artists would take that social responsibility to realize their influence in the world, and that's something that I definitely respect also about the Beastie Boys and other artists that have done the same. They become conscious that it's not all about them. It's not all about the dollar. They actually care, and care goes a lot more farther than the dollar. It just doesn't seem like it.
Well, I agree completely, and it's no accident that my favorite groups are the ones that have the most to say, and it's not all about really great beats and really great music as much as it is about what are they saying. And so it's no accident that one of my favorite groups as Public Enemy.
Right.
I was brought to them pretty early on in my hip hop evolution, and I've been a fan of Chuck D and Public Enemy for a long time because of their convictions and their proud message, and I also like that they hold, that Chuck tries to hold people accountable in a way that sometimes doesn't go over so well, but he really does try to make sure people are walking the walk, and he's like everybody's uncle now. He's really trying to trying to make the world a better place, and he's trying to call out people who are corrupt, and he isn't. I don't know if he would consider himself a politician, but in many ways, he's like an anti-politician. He doesn't want people to use the political system to keep some people down and to enrich the already rich. Right. And I don't want to speak for him, but when I listen to him, I get very excited and inspired because I think he's using his music as a springboard for meaningful discussion. Right. He's not saying in the music itself. He's invited to speak. He questions things. Right. He makes noise where noise needs to be made. Right. And I just, I find that to be inspiring when someone can find, because if you listen to Chuck talk about himself as being a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, he's very humble, and he says, I'm not a singer. He's not a musician in the way that a lot of people play the guitar or play the drum. But he has used his voice as his instrument and his mind as his instrument. And I think I'm so glad that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame can recognize that your instrument doesn't need to be made of steel and wood. Right. It can be your mind. So that's always left a huge impression on me. And, if I can go back to the MCA Day question just for a minute, I don't know if I really explained what that's about. So we have an event in Brooklyn every year. This is the 5th year that we're going to be having it. Mike Kearney from Boston started it. Adam died in May of 2012, and that same month, Mike drove from Boston to New York with a boombox and a bunch of chart paper and some Sharpie markers, and stood on a corner in Union Square and played Beastie Boys music. He didn't know why he was doing it. He didn't know what to expect, and he had basically an impromptu celebration of Adam Yauch's life, and it included several hundred people after a while, and then eventually Ad Rock from the Beastie Boys had gotten wind of it and shown up that same day. And so that was sort of the impromptu celebration that turned into more formal events that we have in Brooklyn at Littlefield Performance Center. And each year we've had an art show, and it's for all ages. And we've it's not been easy, but we've managed to keep it completely and totally free and open to the public. Mm-hmm. And unbelievably, we've had DMC came through and performed. It was almost like having somebody come over to your house and perform in your basement, because it was a very intimate setting, and it was it was fantastic. And we've had support from Danny Boy O'Connor from House of Pain and DJ Hurricane, who performed with the Beastie Boys, among others. And we've had video shout outs from Rakim, Lonely Love, Dougie Fresh, Chuck D, DMC. Yeah, and Be Real from Cypress Hill. Wow. And what's happened is that when I've been meeting people, and you wouldn't know it, but I'm actually a pretty shy person, pretty reserved. But if you give me my painting and you say, "There's the person you painted," I get excited and I get brave. Right. And I'll go up to people, and when I meet them, most of them have been very gracious and friendly and appreciative that I'm trying to pay tribute to them. And if I get to it in my mind, I ask them if they were peers of Adam Yauch, if they would say a few words about the man. And everybody who I've asked, who I know had some sort of relationship with him, has been really accommodating. Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine is another one. Mm. And they they've taken a couple minutes out, and they just reflect. And sometimes it's very short and sweet. Most times it's short, but it's authentic, and they're obviously thinking about somebody they knew as a peer. I mean, I knew him as a fan. Right. They knew him as who they shared the stage with, and they were inspired by on a peer level. So it's very special when they realize that the rest of us want to hear those words. And so this year it's going to be on August 5th at Littlefield, and Littlefield's got a new venue that I haven't been to yet. It's supposed to be bigger and better. And this is going to be, I think, the last one we do, just for the simple fact that none of us live in New York, and we all travel there. We descend on Brooklyn, and at our own expense, we put on this really wonderful, warm, celebratory show. But we are also very busy, and we're doing a lot of other things. So we're going to have a big grand finale. We thought last year was going to be the last one, but with the political climate being what it is, and some of the things that are going on in the world that are going on, we feel that Adam Yauch would have wanted us to step up one more time and have our voices be heard, and in this case on his behalf. Right. And so we're really excited to do it, and we hope people come out and celebrate. And we're looking for some classic hip hop acts that might want to come through or join us or give us a video shout out, because we just want to hear. We want to keep his memory alive, and I don't think there's any doubt that his memory will be kept alive. But it does us good as fans and as hip hop fans in particular to reflect together. And it's very cathartic. So we want to do it one more time, and I think it's going to be a great grand finale for that event.